So RFK Jr. wants in on that first presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And NBC News has confirmed that the third-party hopeful is having a call with CNN today to discuss the debate qualifications. But in the meantime, Trump claims he'd be just fine with the stage getting a little more crowded. Here's what he told a Milwaukee News channel.
I would have no problem if he got whatever the threshold is. But he's very low, and he seems to be heading in the other direction, in the wrong direction. I would have no problem with it, though. If he qualified, I would have no problem.
Okay, I guess he'd have no problem. Right now, it is a big question of whether RFK can even qualify for the June 27th debate. And according to the Biden campaign, they've only committed to doing a one-on-one match with Trump. Peter Baker is the chief White House correspondent for the New York Times. David Jolly is a former Republican congressman from Florida. Both Peter and David are MSNBC political analysts and really good friends of mine. So I'm glad you guys are here. Let's get into this, Peter. The New York Times reports the Biden campaign wanted the debates to be limited to just he and Donald Trump. What reason did they give for it?
Well, I think they think that that's the real choice that faces voters this fall. Let's face it, at this point, RFK Jr. is not on most state ballots. He still has a lot of work to do to get on there. In fact, CNN's own criteria says you can only participate in this debate if you are on enough state ballots to qualify for up to 270 electoral votes, which is what's necessary to win. Otherwise, what's the point of having somebody on stage? Of course, that's the consequence of doing this early because it's not over yet. We haven't gotten to the deadlines, but RFK Jr. is only on about a half dozen state ballots at this point, not enough to get 270 electoral college votes. If he doesn't get on more, obviously he can't be elected president. But that's still, not the reason why the Biden people don't want him on there. The Biden people don't want him on there because they think it's a distraction. They worry that he'll take votes away from Biden. They want a clean shot at Donald Trump because the heart of the argument is going to be you didn't like him in 2020, and while you may not like me, that is the president right now, don't forget how much you didn't like him 4 years ago. Nothing is different. In fact, it's only worse.
So, David, and by the way, I said he and Trump. I mean, it's him. Bad grammar. Anyway, David, the Biden team also wanted no audience for the debates. They got it. Are they right to keep the crowd away? Does it help Biden? Does it hurt Trump, or both?
Yeah. Look, I think it's important. I mean, in a world in which we all live through negative partisanship, which is you hate the other candidate more than you like your own. The Biden statement actually was these forums have become an opportunity for jeering and packing the crowds with partisans. And I don't know that that actually helps distill where the candidates are on the issue. So I think it's a pretty sober statement by Biden. I would also say on Donald Trump's statement about RFK, notice he always has a caveat. He says, I would welcome him if he qualifies, if his numbers are sufficient. I think Donald Trump is also a little worried about the RFK factor. And I would say the fascinating thing in this moment is that both candidates, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, want America to see RFK as more sympathetic to the other guy, right? Trump wants America to see RFK as a traditional mainline Democrat that could take from Biden. Biden wants America to know RFK as a vaccine freedom, science denier, libertarian, Joe Rogan Republican, someone that Aaron Rodgers might have been a running mate for. And so I think there's some give and take on the RFK issue, and I expect to see Joe Biden have a little fun with that.
That's interesting. And that's what you took away from what Donald Trump said. I took away from the fact that in 11 seconds, the span of 11 seconds, he said he'd have no problem with it 3 times. But that's just me. OK, so Peter, Robert Kennedy, he might have a tough time qualifying, though, for the June 27 debate, though he could still pose a danger to the candidates, even if he's not there, right?
Yeah, he could. Look, I think he's kind of an X factor for both campaigns because neither one can be sure of who he hurts more, right? He is obviously a former Democrat, somebody who's got a name of a Democratic pedigree. In that sense, he seems to attract some Democrats who assume he's like his father was or something like that. But he also plays very strongly to a lot of the Trump core voters with his anti-vax campaigns and other, unorthodox, position. So it's really not quite clear. Most polls show kind of a mixed bag right now. There are some states where he takes a little bit more away from President Biden. Some states he takes a little bit more away from former President Trump. And so neither one can be 100% sure of who he hurts the most. The one you hear, though, attacking RFK Jr. the most is Trump. And I suspect that means that suggests that he is particularly worried about RFK Jr. splitting the anti-Biden vote, taking away some of those anti-vax, constituents away from him. And that's why you see him putting out attacks on him as recently as this morning, accusing, RFK Jr. of being too anti-gun.
And I want to make a point that David Axelrod says. He says that the Biden people, they won on three fronts, that being they wanted a debate without a crowd. They got it. They wanted debate without any third-party candidates. At this point, they have got it. And it's also an early debate. The timing is this first one is in June. So there are those points to be made. But let me ask you about this, David, because Trump's hush money trial is expected to end before the first debate. It seems unlikely that any of his other cases are going to go to trial before the election. So how do you expect the end of this current court case to affect the debate? I mean, does it hinge on him being found not guilty?
Yeah. So, Alex, very quickly on Axelrod's comment, I agree. I think Biden rope-a-doped Donald Trump, just like he rope-a-doped Rick Scott at the State of the Union. 2 debates early with no crowd. That is a Biden win. What I would say about the trials themselves is I think it's all baked in. The question is the second-degree analysis. How does Donald Trump handle the trials? Because how Donald Trump handles the trials reminds voters about some of the worst impulses about the former president. That mythical Nikki Haley voter, that lane of voters who says, am I a Republican or can I stay with Donald Trump? It's not so much about the trial. This is arguably very baked in, but how Donald Trump reacts, this angry grievance around being a victim, that turns off a lot of the persuadable voters that Donald Trump needs in November.
Well, just wait. Let's say he is found guilty during this trial. You know, that is going to be ramped up 1,000%. Okay, guys, I hope I see you both this weekend. So we'll check and see if we do. Peter Baker and David Jolly, thank you so much.